Hello. I have no idea what's going on here. Um, uh, we're way behind. Well, we seem to be live again. So hopefully you're getting me on this this time. I'm so sorry. So sorry for the cock up, as they say. It won't happen again. What was that a line out of? I think it was a line out of Notting Hill. Yes, I can't remember exactly why, but it was. It was out of um, Notting Hill with Hugh Grant and Julia Roberts. And even though it's a soppy one, and the critics sort of panic from time to time. I rather like it. I like those sort of soft little things. Um, it's, that come along. Now, with any luck at all, we will find what we're looking for, and and be able to play to you. Yes. Okay. There we go. Now, just let me tell you what we're going to do. Is we've looked up some of the back programs we've done, and we did a series of three on ghosts, and we thought, well, what the heck? It's a nice morning. It's not such a nice morning, actually, but it's a morning that nobody wants to get terribly excited about. So why not take a little look at the ghosts that abound around Lewis and around this part of the world? And they have some interesting associations to ghosts here. The one in Mickleham Priory, for instance, is of the Sackvilles, and is of the of one of the Lords Sackville who owned and lived there for a while. It was a priory. It was a priory of naughty monks who actually would dive into the local village and have their way with the maidens, much to the chagrin of their dads, and they were investigated time after time after time, but they all had one hell of a good time. I mean, it's the sort of organization that you would want to actually belong to join up. Uh, um, but it then fell into the hands of the Sackvilles, who were great friends of Henry VIII and Queen Elizabeth and so on. So we're talking about what the late 1500s, um, early 1600s, in which the Sackvilles took over. But apparently, the boss of the Sackville family, Earl Sackville or Lord Sackville, whatever he was a bit of a naughty boy, and not only did he give the staff a bad time, but the maidens, not only in the village but in his employ, felt his hands in places they shouldn't be from time to time. And then Charles Dickens wrote a ghost book, a ghost story about a train crash, and that was based on a real train crash called Clayton Tunnel, the Ghosts of Clayton Tunnel. And that was based also on the real train crash itself and the fact that there are ghosts said to be there even this day. And then, of course, Lewis Priory, the Priory of St. Pancras, that again has a ghost. So we got three fairly lively ghosts in the area. And we thought, well, let's take a look at them. Shall we? Yeah, why not? Incidentally, what you're looking at is you're looking at Muriel television. She comes out of the White Hart each morning, each weekday morning, and we have a wrap up of the news, take a little break, and we come back with something that you might find interesting of a local nature. And then we quite often have an interview. Because of the break and the strikes and so on, our schedule was thrown into complete and utter chaos. So although we've got interviews, they're not on the days that we anticipated. So we've got a bit of a gap there, and we see what we can do to keep you entertained during that period. But let's take the look on the ghostly side, shall we, to start off with. Why not? Why not, indeed? Now, what we have to do is to get down one of the. Let's try the Priory Ghost first, because actually that's one that isn't so well known. So here we are. They're only little vignettes, but keeping the ghostly side intact.
In 1537, Henry VIII tore down Lewes Priory as part of his dissolution of the monasteries. In 1572, the Newton family built their manor house, the Grange, from stones looted from the priory. A ghostly monk wanders the grounds of the Grange, expressing his displeasure at stealing the stones of his beloved priory. Genry, who stands on guard at the priory, knows this to be true.
And that's the next one, I think. Well, let's stay with the priory, shall we? Yes, why not? Because it's quite short. But it's another priory, and this one is Mickleham Priory, or the Sackville Ghost. Here he is.
Mickleham Priory is near Lewes. It was a former Augustine 13th century monastery. The main building has been preserved, but the church was pulled down by Henry VIII. The monks there had a reputation for naughtiness. Ghostly figures of monks are often seen walking the grounds. Stories of orgies and chasing the girls in the local village were legion. The priory became a private residence. One of its occupants was Sir Thomas Sackville, who lived there in the late 1500s. He was, by all accounts, a nasty bit of work. His ghost is said to bully the other spirits, as well as unsuspecting mortals. It must be true, I felt him kick me.
So that's ghost number 2. And let's have a look at then ghost number 3, which actually is a series of ghosts. And this one was based on in the very early days of steam, on the London to Brighton line through a tunnel which is well over 1.5 miles long. I mean, it's still used. People go through it every day. I've been through it many a time, and it is called the Clayton Tunnel. But this was the worst train disaster on that line since the line was opened in the early part of the 1800s. There are a multiplicity of ghosts on this one, and they make themselves known from time to time, very vocally and very forcibly. Let's see.
Many people find commuting by train tiresome. But one of the pleasures of taking a train to London is that it passes through some of the most beautiful countryside in the UK. None more so than the view of the countryside as the line approaches Clayton Tunnel, just north of Brighton. The tunnel is the longest on the line, at 1.25 miles, running under the South Downs. It's unusual because the entrance is not the usual railway brick. It is instead designed to look like the gateway to a castle. On top is a cottage built for the railway's lightkeeper in 1849. The tunnel itself was opened in 1841 and the cottage added later. Idyllic. But after 1861 it became a nightmare, or at least for those who believe in ghostly goings-on. In August of that year, a night train left Brighton, travelling north to London. Partway through the tunnel, it stopped at what it thought was a danger signal from the lightman. The engine driver was correct. The railway official had indeed given a danger signal, but the train had rushed past him before pulling up. Thinking the train had cleared the tunnel, the unfortunate lightman gave the all clear to a following train. And it slammed into the back of the first train in the dark, killing 23 and injuring 176 more. It was the worst ever accident on the line. And people walking on the downs over the underground passage have reported hearing the screams of the passengers as the trains pile into each other. The line is now also a direct line from Lewes. I've travelled through that tunnel 1,000 times. I've never heard a scream other than the screech of the wheels and brakes. But I've never walked over the downs at that point either. And I turned down an invitation to stay in the cottage overnight. In fact, I get tense each time I go into the tunnel, knowing what had happened more than 165 years ago. But my fellow passengers carry on reading their newspapers, obviously oblivious to both the tragedy and the ghosts. I could sometimes scream at them. The ghosts of Clayton Tunnel. Eerie. Bloody eerie.
Well, three ghostly stories, three ghostly figures, and believe what you will. However, it's not widely known that Charles Dickens, the famous 19th century novelist, spent a lot of time in this area. He roamed from Brighton to Eastbourne to Hastings to Battle, and was constantly on the move, looking for stories, and also being an influential figure in the change in Victorian attitudes to a lot of social instances. He in fact, was in Seaford when the good worthies of the town blew up Seaford Head, a great big jutting promontory sticking out just at the foot of the River Ouse. The reason they blew it up was that they wanted to divert the river, which at one time had exited, if you like, its estuary was at Seaford, making Seaford a quite prosperous and important port. But various storms and erosions and so on had switched the mouth of the Ouse back to Newhaven, where it is today. And they wanted to get it back. The worthies of Seaford wanted to get it back. So they blew up part of the cliff face in the hope that it would divert the river back to themselves. And in fact, it did for all 2 or 3 days, only for them to find that most of this rubble was chalk and just dissolved in the river. And the river carried on its merry way to just the way that it does today, and to exit at Seaford. And now the reason that I'm telling you that is, first of all, Charles Dickens was in the crowd that saw Seaford Head blown up. But he also was on a train in Kent, which had an accident. And several people died in that accident. But he was in the very first carriage, and it took place on a viaduct. And all the carriages but one, the first one, plunged to a viaduct down below. And the only people saved were in carriages number 1 and the train crew. And where was Dickens? He was in carriage number 1. So he was saved to write some of his greatest stuff. But he used Clayton Tunnel, having been involved in and experienced a train crash. He used Clayton Tunnel to write a book, a ghost story, which took place with a ghost train. So there you are. I bet you didn't know that. I didn't until I researched it either. It's an interesting little story. The issue of whether he was in Lewes at all is the chances are very good that he was, because he spent a lot of time in Brighton, and Lewes was and still is in many ways, is the focal point for both rail and coach and other forms of transport spinning off. I mean, even today, Lewes is the center, if you like, of how trains get to Brighton, how they get to London, how they get to Hastings and Eastbourne, and how they get to Seaford, which is or Newhaven, which is where the ferry goes from. So it is a central hub, and he would have come through here many a time because he travelled a great deal by train. And there is evidence that he would stay in some residences just south in Saddlecombe. I think it's or Telscombe. The Telscombe Cliffs, a very tiny, cut off little community south of Lewes, and some manuscripts and written evidence of his staying there has been found. So we assume that Dickens, in fact, made this very much a part of his life. Now it's 9:59, and we're going to take another break. But first of all, I told you yesterday, and I want to remind you again today, we have started a vlog system so that some of our stories can be reduced to 4 or 5 minutes and help you and other people around the world not spend huge amounts of time, but to click into some of our stories without spending the whole day doing so. And I just want to show you, if I can, the vlog. There will be a new one tomorrow. We showed this 2 or 3 times just to get you used to having a blog or a vlog, as they're called. And here it is, the very first one of this series.
I think the government stinks. And I think the last government stank. And what's more, I think the government even before that stank. Whether I believe that or not is quite irrelevant. What is important is whether I can say it without being locked up by the King's men. It wasn't always so. The rights enjoyed in a free democracy started right here. It was here, near to the High Street, that blood was shed in the name of freedom. It was match of the day, the King versus the Barons. King Henry III was roundly defeated at the Battle of Lewes, just on the edge of the town. Despite holding the castle, the King's men were put to the sword, and many were massacred in both the huge priory, which stood near the town, and right here in our bloody High Street. panicking soldiers were easy pickings for the pursuing forces of Simon de Montfort. The Battle of Lewes is said to be the first step towards democracy in this country. That was in 1243.
When you say the Battle of Lewes, to most people around this country now, they glance at you with vacant eyes. They don't know what it's about. What was it about?
Well, you're right. Most people here don't know about it. What happened was Simon de Montfort and his barons were arguing with the king and his men about representation in Parliament, whereas the king, the king just had all of his men and a lot of his French relatives in Parliament, and he was taxing the barons very heavily, and all of this money was going to the French relatives or going abroad, and the barons were not very happy about this. So they wanted at least half of the 24 men in Parliament to be elected barons. So, I mean, though it's not very democratic in the sense that we have it today, it's the start of that representation of a view that is not just the king's view on how things should be run. Simon de Montfort got to hear that the king was down at the Priory of St. Pancras. And why he was there was for the Feast of St. Pancras in the middle of May. And of course it was a big feast and people would come from all over the world, actually, or all over Europe to the feast. So he needed somewhere as big as the Priory to be able to feed all these people and entertain them for a few days. And that's why he was here. Simon de Montfort was up country in northern Sussex in some of his estates with his men, and he heard that the king was down here and he sent messengers. He sent bishops of Winchester and London down with money, with £30,000, which is a fortune in those days, to try and negotiate a settlement with the king. The king was a little bit reticent to go into war with Simon de Montfort because, yes, they were brother-in-laws and he was an old man. They were in their late 50s at the time. Not that that's old now, but it was then. But the king's brother, Richard of Alamein, also called King of the Romans, etc., he wanted war. And, of course, Prince Edward, hothead, he definitely wanted war. So they settled, you know, the ransom money was sent back and the envoys, the bishops were sent back, and so it was war the next day. They negotiated the Mise of Lewes, most of which was, you know, yes, we took this castle, well, we give you it back, and you give us this, and we'll ransom this man and that man for this man and that kind of thing. But it also set down where the king would say, you know, 24 of the 24, we're going to have 12 elected barons, so that we're going to have the beginning of a parliamentary election. And Simon de Montfort made the king hand over his seals, which meant that the king had no power. So Simon de Montfort became the de facto king. It changed the king's complete and outright power. And Prince Edward then went on to, as king, ratify the clauses of the Magna Carta and the provisions of Oxford. And those began to change the king's power. And it also meant things like, if a woman died as a widow, her dowry money was hers. It didn't need to be given over to her husband's family and sons and what have you.
There's a start of women's rights as well.
There you go.
My goodness
There
me.
you go. The Normans did it for us.
Well, there you are. There's 4 little vignettes. Tomorrow, the next, the second vlog will carry on with the story of the story of little things keep popping up. It's very disturbing, really, but I have to read them because who knows? It may be signaling the end of the world. Don't take me too seriously. But we will carry on with the second of the vlogs, which pursues the start of democracy in Lewes. So do join us then. Now, we're going to go away for another 15 minutes or so, and then we will come back just to finish our day gently today, I'm happy to say. Gently it is. So let's say toodle pip for a moment or two, and I hope that you enjoyed the bits that we've managed to give you this morning. A bit quirky. Yes, we are quirky, but nonetheless, we try hard to bring you the basic information, the basic news, and the basic people involved all the time. Right. Okay. So let's say toodles for a moment or two, and then we'll be back with last little offering in 20 minutes or so.
Thank you.